Good evening. I hereby call to order this meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors. Mr. Miller, do we have any amendments to the agenda, sir?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. I'll now open the floor for public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. And I see we do not have any public hearings scheduled for this evening. Anyone here in the boardroom who wishes to provide public comment, please come forward at this time. Welcome, Mr. Simonoff. Do you have exhibits for the board? Yes, sir. Please come forward. Thank you, sir. And don't forget to state your name and address. We'll do 2 there first. Thank you. Mr. Dines, do you have the timer ready, sir? Thank you, sir. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Simonoff.
Okay. My name is Adam Simonoff, 5340 Gordon Drive, King George, Virginia. Is the timer on? Okay. I didn't know whether I watched it.
Yes, sir. When it gets to 30 seconds, he'll put it on full display on the screen, so you'll know you'll want to wrap it up.
Okay. So here's my statement. The new Governor Nice Bridge doubles traffic capacity while the 2 US 301 intersections at Roseland Road and Barnesfield Road remain the same. Drivers going north on US 301 to Roseland Road and the Potomac Riverfront Parks have to yield indefinitely to oncoming traffic from the new bridge. I propose replacing those intersections with a new left-hand exit ramp on US 301 North that crosses over US 301 South to reduce the risk of collision and congestion at the mouth of the new bridge in Virginia. My proposal also includes economic development through tourism by connecting the secondary roads at Barnesfield Park to the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail, which includes the Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail. I plan to propose this idea to VDOT on January 24th, and I would be happy to brief at length to a King George County Board of Supervisors Town Hall for endorsement by the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for coming out. Anyone else here in the audience who wishes to provide public comment this evening? Ms. Lavelle. Welcome.
My name is Ana Maria Lobo. I live in Presidential Lakes. I'm not going to say too many things. I only wanted to thank you to the supervisors, to the service to the community. I want to thank you, Mr. Bush, because I didn't know tonight was the last time you assist the meeting. I want to thank you for your service. And I want to thank you, all the employees that they work for the county also. And I want to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I want to congratulate Mrs. Kathy Bender. This victory clearly acknowledges your outstanding service to the community, as well as your district trust in you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lavelle. Anyone else here in the boardroom who wishes to provide public comment, please come forward at this time. All right, seeing none, Mr. Dines, do we have anyone waiting online to provide public comment? Thank you. Members, did anyone receive correspondence to be read during public comment from constituents? No? All right, I'll now close public comment and we'll move on to reports of members of the board. We'll start with Mr. Granger, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Just first of all, I'd like to say, Mr. Simonoff, thank you for coming out. I appreciate your comments and I appreciate the ideas that you bring. Always appreciate when citizens can come and you know, sometimes maybe those ideas might be too ambitious and sometimes we can make them work, but I always appreciate to hear them and to come up with good ideas and see if they can work. So thank you for doing that. Ms. Lavelle, again, always thank you for coming out. I appreciate you being here and the fact that you follow so closely what's going on in our community. So thank you for listening and thank you for your comments as well. Other than that, on Monday, December 13th, I attended the radio equipment meeting. Thanks to the Sheriff Department and Fire and Rescue Departments for hosting that and providing the information to the board to help us to just be ready to make a decision, hopefully in the not too distant future on what the best way forward is on that topic and how to provide for the needs of our community. Also on Wednesday, December 15th, I did attend the staff Christmas gathering, just an opportunity to meet with staff and say thank you to the staff for their service to this community. They provide so many services, and I I really appreciate what they do. They serve myself as well. I go into those departments as well as a citizen, and so I know they serve everyone in this community. So thank you to everyone on the staff and all that you do for this community. And lastly, the only thing I would like to say is just to say thank you to Mr. Bush, my colleague, for the 4 years of service. It's been a pleasure to serve with you, sir. I really appreciate what you've done and your commitment to the community, and just wish you the best of luck moving forward in your life and everything that God has planned for you. And everyone have a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Stonehill.
Good evening. Mr. Simonoff, thanks for coming out. You always do your homework and research very thoroughly, and I appreciate you sharing that all with us. Thank you. Ms. Lavelle, thanks for coming out. You always have kind words for all of us up here, and the sheriff's office usually behind you as well. So thanks for coming out. Wednesday the 8th, I attended the Rappahannock River Basin Commission down in Doswell, where they did a lot of different presentations for the Rappahannock. Did learn about a very interesting program through the state, which impacts some of our folks here in King George. There is actually a free service for anybody living along the Rappahannock or the Potomac that is having problems with shoreline erosion. They actually have a free service that does helps with planning and design work and the whole project of doing living shorelines for either one of the river. It is a free service. If anyone's interested in having more information, they can contact me. They also spoke about the WIP programs, about stormwater and sewage runoff into the river. And Brent Hunsinger, who is our river steward here for King George, gave a brief on the health and what's coming up for next year. Monday the 13th, I also attended the radio workshop here to replace our fire rescue sheriff's office radio system. Wednesday the 15th, I had the privilege once again to help out with Shop with a Sheriff down at Walmart this year. We had about 30 kids this year to do, and it was a great fun for everybody, and just wanted to say thank you very much to the King George County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Giles, and your whole staff, YMCA and Amar at Subway for providing food like he always does. It was a great time had by everybody. I guess that's the end of my report. Now, Jeff, thank you for your years of service here. You've done a lot for the county. You've done a lot for the board and everything. We could go on and on. You've entertained the public and us a lot, and keeping everybody straight. But I just wanted to say thank you for the last 2 years that I've been on the board with you, and good luck with your future endeavors. And for everybody in King George, happy holidays and a fantastic New Year. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Ms. Bender.
Yes, I would like to thank Mr. Simonoff for coming out and giving his present detailed packet. Ms. Lavelle, always thank you very much for your kind words, and I appreciate always having a good conversation with you. I want to thank our sheriff's office and all of our officers that have come out. We didn't see a lot of you at the Christmas party because you were on your shifts and you were working. So I want to personally thank you and wish you a Merry Christmas, along with our fire and rescue, who also, a lot of them were not there because they were out doing their job. And I just want to thank them personally also. One thing I want to say is to Jeff, we came in together. You're leaving before me, and I appreciate serving with you for 4 years. And I know you'll do great things, and I can say you'll probably be back in some form somehow, someday. And I appreciate you serving 4 years, and we came in together, and I know you'll continue on your path and be very active in politics. And I want to wish everyone in King George a Merry Christmas and a happy holidays, and I'll see you in January.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to Ms. Lavelle, thank you for your comments this evening. As always, you're very supportive of this board, very active in the community, and keep up with things. So thank you very much. Mr. Simonoff, thank you for this. Don't know how it's going to pan out. Good luck with your presentation to VDOT, but it obviously took a lot of hard work. I think it's an idea of merit. So thank you very much for bringing that this evening. It's nice to see so many of King George's finest here this evening. I hope there isn't a warrant out for me that I'm not aware of, but thank y'all for being out here this evening. Last week, I did a walk down at Fairview Beach to put eyes on the riverbank stabilization project. That's something that's very near and dear to my heart to see actually coming to fruition. Prior to my election, it's something that I followed, and seeing how all that progressed with the FEMA grant and Mr. Christopher Worley doing all that legwork to bring it about, Mr. Bennett's efforts, this board's efforts in supporting it. To see what's going on down there is just truly amazing to see the fruits of the labor. So that is progressing very nicely. So I think it's going to be in good hands when Mr. Collins comes on board. So thank you to my wife and my son Tyler for being here this evening. And Madam Chair, that concludes my report. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Thank you, Mr. Simonoff, for coming out this evening and presenting your comment. I appreciate your input. Ms. Lavelle, thank you very much likewise for your public comment. We appreciate you coming out to the meetings and following what's going on in our community. On Friday, December 10th, I attended the King George Family YMCA Dodgeball Tournament. I want to thank Nick Miner for recruiting the administration team. We even got County Administrator Mr. Miller out there on the court. And Chief Moody, and I believe a large contingent of his personnel are outside in the hall waiting to come in as well, for fielding a fire rescue team and everyone who came out and played and watched. Monday, December 13th, I attended the CIP project, radio project work session. Thanks again to staff and everyone for your continuing work on that initiative. Wednesday, December 15th, attended the county staff holiday luncheon. Thank you to the Department of Human Resources and Administration for your planning, and the Department of Parks and Recreation for hosting the event, and congratulations to our Making a Difference honorees. Last night, I attended the Department of Social Services Administrative Board meeting. A few notes. I want to thank Representative Rob Whitman for his letter of support for our 2022 round of VATI, Virginia Telecommunications Initiative grant funding, which was announced by Governor Northam on December 13th. And with this comes renewed constituent interest in our regional broadband project. So I'm requesting consensus of the board to direct economic development and tourism staff. And I believe Ms. Binder asked for this at the last meeting. So if we can all get on the same page to include project status updates in his director monthly report, not just limited. So right now he is, but what is being reported is the status of grant funding, current grant funds applied for, and updates and such. And I think it would help us to better communicate the progress of the actual progress and installation to our constituents if we had that information in his monthly report as well. So I'm asking, would there be consensus from my colleagues to direct that? All right, so Mr. Miller, can you take care of that for us, please? Thank you. I've noted an increase of complaints or concerns on social media, and I've received a few emails with respect to Atlantic Broadband's service. And so I wanted to check with my members to see if there be consensus of the board to direct the county attorney to review the contract documents and franchise agreement with Atlantic Broadband, in particular regarding lack of physical staff on site. Our county, neither our county nor the Commonwealth is under a state of emergency. So I should think that perhaps they might be able to go back to normal office staffing, but we continue to receive complaints and also a lot on social media about poor customer service and outage concerns. So would there be consensus from my colleagues to make that, give that direction to the county attorney? All right, so Ms. Lackey. All right, thank you, ma'am. I have a grant opportunity that I wish to request consensus of the board to direct staff. It is let me make sure I have the right name, the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And the grant application doesn't close until May, but if you want to apply, you have to submit a letter of intent by January 14th. So I'd be looking for consensus of the board to direct staff to submit a letter of intent for a grant proposal. You can request between $75,000 and $150,000. There's no local match for up to $150,000 for electrical service upgrades for Ralph Bunche High School. And I did ask a question of Mr. Cusenberry, the county engineer, and I copied Mr. Miller on it last week to see what his recommendation would be. And he stated that we could do a lot of work towards electrical improvements with $150,000. That would cover the cost of a service upgrade or replacement and the extension of new feeder and branch lines throughout the building. Then at the future date, once the use of the building is determined, extensions can be made for to the various new spaces. So would there be consensus to direct staff to submit a letter of intent? And then if they like your letter of intent, then the organization invites you to actually apply for the grant. The letter is okay? Yes? Yes? Okay. Thank you. So Mr. Miller, will you get that request to Economic Development and Tourism staff, please? Thank you. I have another matter related directly to Ralph Bunche High School. So, and this is an interesting circumstance where our local reporter from the Freelance Star, Kathy Dyson, is actually part of the story. So this is one email. She does not have to file a FOIA request with the county to get a copy of the email because she actually sent us the email from the donor. She was contacted by a resident of the city of Fredericksburg, and she asked her to put her in touch with myself and Ms. Jordan of the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association. She purchased a home that was previously owned by a local architect named John Ballantyne Jr. Mr. Ballantyne actually was the architect who did the design and the plan for the 1957 addition to Ralph Bunche High School. And in the course of renovating the home, digging through the attic, they've come across a lot of historical treasures. And one of them actually is the architect's set of the drawings for the 1957 edition. She spoke with me, and it's my understanding she spoke with Ms. Jordan as well about this. And she asked that we find a way to get these drawings to the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association so that in the future they could use them as some type of museum exhibit. So Mr. Miller did get the drawings, and he made sure that the county has its own set. We have our own set of the drawings, so it's not like this is something that we don't already have. So we'd like to go ahead and go forward with the donor's request to present them to the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association. So it's my understanding there are some representatives here. I see Ms. Jordan is here. Would you like to come up, Ms. Jordan, and I'll present you with the drawings? All right, and then the last item is, so we are doing this in the board report tonight, so we get it done because we know there are family members of Mr. Bush here who might want to leave, and there are friends, and there are many first responders who probably have to go back into service. So that's why we're doing this now. We'd like to present county recognition of the service of James Monroe District Supervisor, Mr. Jeffrey Bush. And so the first person I'll call forward is Sheriff Chris Giles. Welcome, sir.
Well, actually, now that you mention it, Supervisor Bush, please accept this very small token of our appreciation for your unwavering support of the Sheriff's Office. Your leadership and guidance have gotten the county through some of the toughest times. In 2018, you chaired a debt mitigation plan that put our rating well above what it had been. Through your guidance, a resolution was formed making King George's Second Amendment sanctuary. Your concern for the health and safety of all the citizens of King George has led to having the lowest numbers of the regions in the pandemic. Your concern for public safety pay, compensation, benefits, recruiting, and retention has helped us develop a step pay program, which has already showed dividends in the hiring process. These are just a small portion of what you've done in your tenure as James Monroe Supervisor. To say you've been inactive while serving the citizens in King George would be an understatement and just not true. Supervisor Bush, the Sheriff's Office would like to thank you from all of us for always being in our corner and fighting for us. May God bless you and your family with your new endeavors. If I could get you to come forward, please. You're blocking him.
You're good.
Chief Moody, would you and your personnel like to join us in here, sir?
The fire rescue personnel went from many to few. So just as probably 2 or 3 minutes ago, the crew went out to a motor vehicle crash, and the job comes first. That's what we're here for, to serve the community. Supervisor Bush, I did not have any prepared comments, but I want to speak from my heart. Jeff has been, he's been on the board since 2018. He's been our liaison, which is a board-appointed position to fire rescue. We've had a lot of weekend conversations, a lot of after-hour conversations. We've dealt with some complex issues. I've always found Jeff to be a voice of reason and sometimes with a little added commentary. But always, one thing about that I knew early on with working with Jeff is that he always put the citizens' best interests first in King George County. And he always looked out after how much it was going to cost them, how they were going to be served, and were they winning at the end of the day. And it's been a pleasure. I've worked with a number of people that supervisors over the years have been in that position, and we do have a small token of appreciation. I will say this is a firefighter's axe, and this is not to be used for chopping wood on your property. So on the back of this, we have some commentary and some wishes. It's got a little bit of weight to it. On the front of it says, with many thanks and appreciation from all the members of King George County Department of Fire Rescue and Emergency Services. I know you won't be but a phone call away, but sir, I appreciate all your friendship and your partnership and supervision over the past 4 years. So thank you.
Oh, yes. Sorry. How are you doing? That's awesome. Okay.
So, Mr. Bush, you can add that one to your wall back here, but don't sit down because we have one to present you on behalf of the county. Ms. Bender went to go grab it. And if I could have all 5 of us down in front, please, for the picture. And Mr. Miller, Ms. Lackey, would you like to join us?
Yeah.
The County flag and the Commonwealth of Virginia flag, and the flag honoring his years of service. So we need a lot of wall space for all this hardware taking home, Mr. Bush. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors of King George County, we present you with this. Thank you so much for your service to your district and our community.
Thank you so much.
All right, Mr. Bush, do you have anything else you wish to add this evening, sir, as we close it out?
I do, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. So I'm incredibly humbled by the recognitions afforded me this evening. 4 years ago, I came onto this board thinking I knew everything. And then after the second meeting, I realized I didn't know anything. This job takes a lot of conversations, relationships, doing your own investigations, staying apprised of social media, but not so much relying on it. At the end of the day, You're never going to please everybody. And if everybody thinks you're doing a great job, chances are you're lying to half of them. You got to come into this job and make the best decision you possibly can with the information you have at the time. There's no crystal ball involved. There's no rearview mirror. And I'm very proud of the 4 years that I've had and the outcomes of that. I served with some great people. I think we worked very well as a board. We didn't always agree, but that mutual respect was always there. There have been times that the vote's been 4-1, and I'm sometimes that one. But there's so many issues in this county, you can't just focus on that. It's move to the next issue and move to the next issue. It's always going to be there. My year as chair, I'm extremely proud of. We put in a debt mitigation plan. We signed a new comprehensive plan. We signed an economic development strategic plan. My first 3 years on the board, the tax rate was not increased. We had to do it last year, but I believe there were a lot of things that came into play. And one thing that I'm very proud of, and I'm very appreciative of this board for seeing it through, was our public safety compensation package. There's a lot more work to be done. The future is uncertain. Nobody thought we'd experience COVID. We thought the economy was on the rise, and now we're looking at inflation. It's happened before. It'll happen again. We adapt and we move on. And I think that's the one thing I could say about King George County and the Board of Supervisors that we have is we can adapt and it's resilient. So my hair was a lot darker when I was sworn in 4 years ago. And my wife's patience has really been through a test. So, Ann, thank you for putting up with the phone calls, the emails, being stopped at Sheetz and Wawa for people to complain about something or to be thankful of something. But it's truly been an honor. I thank God for the opportunity that He gave me to serve, and I look forward to what the future holds. Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. County officials reports, constitutional officers report. Mr. Vic Mason, clerk of the Circuit Court. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, Merry Christmas. I have a mid-year request to convert a part-time position into a full-time position. The cost this year would be $7,114. The justification for this and the numbers I give you are based on the first 10 months of 2018, excuse me, as compared to the first 10 months of this year. Overall, we've seen about a 29 to 30% increase in the overall workload, a 58% increase in the land recordations. That 58% increase in the land recordations has led to a 119% increase in recordation taxes, which for the first 10 months was an additional $374,000 as compared to 2018. I appreciate your consideration on this matter. And I do want, on a personal note, I'd like to thank the board and the sheriff for all the work they put in on the Machoda Creek Bridge renaming. So I want to thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Do we have any questions from members of the board with regard to Mr. Mason's request? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the county administrator to transfer $7,114 from the general fund balance to the clerk of the court budget to convert the current part-time position to full-time as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. And our treasurer, Mr. Randy Jones. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank Supervisor Bush for his committed service to King George County. I can say I personally have always valued our many interactions. You've often taken time to discuss some issues that we may not necessarily agree on, but I feel like you've always been super respectful. And I value those type of interactions. So I wish you well in your future. And I know whatever it is that you will do, you'll do it well and with a little bit of humor. And we always appreciate that. King George Treasurer News, happy to report that all of the mail from this year's tax season has been entered. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. We employed 2 wonderful part-time employees a little bit earlier than normal. So we were able to take care of the taxes a little bit sooner. Now onto my monthly receipts and expenditures report. Began the month of November with a balance of $24,949,491.09. We collected receipts of $20,881,601.84. And the county had a monthly expenses of $19,522,344.68, leaving an ending balance of $26,308,748.25. And I can report that these totals have been reconciled to the general ledger.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from members for Mr. Jones? No. All right, sir, with that, I will go ahead and enter into the record of the meeting the November 2021 summary and the November 2021 receipts expenditures that you forwarded to the board earlier today. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for coming out. Merry Christmas. And before I move on, I know Commissioner of the Revenue Judy Hart is present here this evening. Commissioner Hart, would you like to come forward and address the board, or are you just here watching today? Very good. I hope it's been entertaining thus far. Thank you, ma'am, for coming out and joining us this evening. All right, with that, we'll move on to report of the county attorney, Ms. Lackey.
I have just a short report. Former County Attorney Matt Britton is going to end his tenure officially as a county employee this week, and appreciate the fine job he's done. And he has agreed to continue as an independent contractor to my office for an estimated 2 months. And this is something that was contemplated before my hiring, just to help with the transition and to, utilize his vast, extensive knowledge of the county. But I'm available for any questions if there are any in that regard.
Any members have questions? No? No? So, Ms. Lackey, do we need to direct you to sign the agreement, or is that something you're able to do just by nature of the fact that you are the county attorney and it would be through your budget?
I have budgeted funds available to do so.
Very good. All right, then. And that's everything?
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Did you have something, Mr. Bush?
No, Madam Chair. I was just going to say I'm going to miss that little man.
All right, then. Let's move on to presentations and reports. 12-10A, presentation of annual audit. Mr. Miller, do you want to introduce?
I'm going to let Ms. Hahn introduce Mr. Grossnickel, if that's okay.
Welcome, Ms. Hahn.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Mr. Andrew Grossnickel is are you the senior vice president or not quite sure what your partner in charge with Robinson Fox and Robinson Farmer Cox and Associates. They're out of Fredericksburg, Virginia. And Mr. Grossnickel has been King George County's auditor for
10+ years.
Yes. I know he was here when I got here, and he's very familiar with King George County, works well with the finance staff as well as the schools, the treasurer's office, Commissioner of Revenue, the library. So and the service authority. He pulls everything in, him and his staff, and he presented to you our annual financial report that was submitted to the Department of Accounts on time this year. And with that, I will let Mr. Grossnickel present to you.
Thank you. I appreciate the time this evening. Just want to take a few minutes. I know you have already had some more exciting things on the agenda, and you have plenty more after me. So I'll try to keep it relatively brief and hit the high notes here. You engaged us, as you always do, to conduct the audit for the fiscal year June 30th, 2021, which is both a financial statement audit as well as a compliance-related audit. And our audit was subject, as it always is, to the auditing standards generally accepted by the United States of America, the specifications for audits of counties, cities, and towns, which is issued by the Auditor of Public Accounts of Virginia, standards for financial audits contained in government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General, and then the provisions of the Uniform Guidance Act. So the main byproduct of our audit process and testing and everything that we do is really the auditor type reports that are contained in the financial statements that you have there. The financial statements comprise the new terminology is the annual comprehensive financial report. And our reports that are included in there include one that is on the numbers of the financial statements, that's the independent auditor's report, and then 2 compliance type reports. So the first of those reports, the independent auditor's report, is on the numbers in the financial statements, and the current language for that is an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on the financial statements. We did highlight in that opinion this year that there was a GASB pronouncement that went into effect. We've had, so many of them over the recent years. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board puts out different pronouncements for accounting for local governments. And as we've discussed a little bit in the past, they put out about 34 of those up until 2002 from the beginning of time, and now they're up in the 90s in the last 20 years. So they've been quite busy with those. This year there was one that was relatively impactful, and that was GASB statement number 84 related to fiduciary activities. And what it did was redefine what counted as agency funds and things of that nature. And so it moved a couple of funds out of the agency category and consolidated them into the governmental activities. And then for the school side, it brought in the school activity funds into the financial statements. In the past, those were considered not really funds of the governmental organization, but with the new change in this accounting standard, it required you to bring that money in. And that's the club monies and things like that that are at each individual school. You'll see a separate fund in the school part of the financial statements for those. So we do highlight that, as we always do any kind of real impactful GASB pronouncements that go into effect during the year. The second report that we have is what folks refer to as the Government Auditing Standards Report, or the Yellow Book Report. It's on internal controls and compliance related matters. Police report, we didn't have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies to report for fiscal year 2021. And then finally, we have our Uniform Guidance Report, or our Single Audit Report. And that is on the federal expenditures that the county has. Any governmental organization and nonprofits that expend over $750,000 of federal awards in a given year are subject to a single audit, where we select the major programs based on different criteria and audit those for the guidance that is put forth by the grantor agency. So, for example, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which we audited as a major program this year, that's ultimately monies from the Department of Treasury. And so they've put forth the guidance that we follow on that. So we audited this year as major programs the Coronavirus Relief Fund, as well as the Education Stabilization Fund, which is another bucket of CARES-related monies that the schools received from this year. And we did not have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies related to those single audit programs that we audited. We do have 2 communication letters that have been provided to you. They are included kind of in the front cover of your, just kind of loosely there. If you open up the financial report, I inserted those in the front cover. And the first of those is the communication with those charged with governance. It's a couple page memorandum style document that just goes through some of the standard communications we have to make at the end of the audit process. States that we had no disagreements with management, that management made all the representations that we asked them to make. It highlights a couple of the significant accounting estimates, such as useful lives of capital assets and pension and OPEB liabilities that are, independent actuaries provide estimates on. And we do again highlight that GASB pronouncement that went into effect. We did have a couple of items for management letter comments and recommendations. That's the 1-page document that's in there. A couple recommendations related to the Treasurer's Office. Just items that we feel there are improvements to be made in certain areas of internal controls that we note throughout our audit process. So I want to bring those to your attention. I do want to touch on just a few of the financial statement highlights. I won't get too deep into the numbers for June 30th, 2021. But whereas the Service Authority is completely on a business type basis, all of the long-term assets and liabilities are in all of their financial statements. For general government purposes, there are sort of 2 different bases of accounting included in the financial report. There's that same full accrual basis that includes all the long-term debt and pension and OPEB and things of that nature and the capital assets, and that brings you a sort of a residual balance of a net position. And then there's the modified accrual basis, which is really how you budget for your governmental funds, which is the modified accrual basis or the fund balance basis of accounting. And in that basis, your residual is fund balance. And so from a full accrual basis, your net position for governmental funds at June 30th, 2021 was $75.8 million. That was an increase of a little over $3 million from June 30th, 2020. The fund balances for the governmental funds at June 30th, 2021 were $81.6 million. And that was an increase of $26.8 million. A large amount of that increase was due to bond issuances for Capital Projects Fund. When you isolate, because when I speak of governmental funds, that includes your Capital Projects Fund, your general fund, all of your governmental type activities, your non-water and sewer items. So when you isolate the general fund, that increase for the general fund was $4.8 million. But again, the capital projects, they issued some debt, and that increases temporarily the fund balance that will then just be drawn down as you budget the expenditures for the corresponding capital projects. The total unassigned fund balance of the general fund was $27.7 million at June 30th, 2021. And then when you have time, an exhibit that I always like to reference is the budgetary comparison schedule for the general fund. It's Exhibit 9, and it goes through the revenue and expenditure amounts for the general fund with the original budget, a final budget, and an actual figure. And you'll see when you go through that exhibit that in total the general fund revenues were over budget by a little over $4 million. And the general fund expenditures were actually under budget by $7.2 million. So you had favorable variances from a budgetary standpoint on both revenues and expenditures for the general fund. Next, I have just a brief summary of the 5-year analysis of fund balance for the general fund only. You can see that over the last 5 years, we've gone from a $27.1 million general fund balance to a $35.8 million general fund balance. And this chart just kind of shows the different buckets, the restricted, the non-spendable, committed, and unassigned monies. This next chart just kind of gives you a breakdown of the trend analysis of the governmental fund revenues by major category: property taxes, other local taxes, intergovernmental, so forth and so on. You'll see the large increase in 2020 to 21 of the intergovernmental revenues. In that, a lot of that is that CRF money and the different CARES monies that were received. A couple smaller pieces in addition to that CRF money. But that's why that amount kind of sticks out as one that trended upwards in 2021. This is a little visual pie chart of kind of where those monies break down. Obviously, a large portion of the governmental fund revenues are property taxes, 46.5%, followed by intergovernmental, which was 22.6% of the total governmental revenues, and other local taxes. That's like your meals tax and business license tax and those sorts of local taxes. That comprises 15% of your governmental fund revenues for 2021, which totaled a little over $63 million. Then your governmental fund expenditures. This includes, again, the capital projects fund and the general fund and your other governmental funds. So the little trend there that kind of went up and down from education related to capital projects timing of the improvements with the middle school expansion and things of that nature, where they temporarily went up and then kind of you can see kind of normalized back down in 2021 to closer to what those expenditures were in 2018 fiscal year. All the other trends are kind of very in line with the year-over-year analysis. And then similar to what we had for revenue, I just have a little pie chart that gives you a visual representation of the governmental fund expenditures, which totaled $59.4 million for the year ended June 30th, 2021. Education being 32%, which really is your contribution to the school board for the local part of expenditures for education. And then you have public safety at 23.4% as the next largest bucket there. With that, I'd be glad to open it up to any questions that the board may have about the audit and the financial statements.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation. Questions from members? No? Oh, Mr. Stonehill?
Just thanks for coming out.
Ms. Bender?
Thank you for coming out. There's a lot of information to absorb. Thank you.
Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. He answered the question I had about education. That was just encompassing the local contribution. So I don't have any specific questions, but if you would entertain discussion, there is something I would like to point out. But
sure.
Is now fine, ma'am?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm looking at this nice booklet you gave us, sir. Page 9, I'm looking at governmental revenues, and I believe there was a slide on here. So I'm just from my perspective, I see how it's broken down. I'm not challenging the way it's broken down. What I'm seeing is, to me, is problematic. What I find problematic is that the general property taxes are basically making up 46% of our revenues. And I know we now, we're looking into economic development and moving forward with that, but I would like to see some of these other buckets, like other local taxes, eventually grow. We can't be in a position where we're relying so heavily on property taxes. And then the last thing I'd like to point out is on page 10. Every time budget comes up, and I bring this up now because when I'm off the board, it's going to be a quick turn. I know you guys are going to quickly approach budget season. So there's always talk about how King George doesn't support education. You need to fully fund the school board's budget, et cetera, et cetera. Well, looking at the local contribution, which is what the county gives in addition to all those state and federal revenues that go to the schools, that's encompassing a lot more than anything else. 32% just in local contribution of all the monies that the county has to operate out of, 32% goes to education. So I do want to go on the record and specify that via this audit, that this board does support King George County Schools, our education system, and here it is in black and white. So that's just the 2 points I wanted to make on the audit, sir. It looks very thorough. Thank you very much. I look forward to reading this and then giving my successor a phone call and running it down with him and see if he agrees with me on it. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. So can I ask a question, sir, then, with regard to page 9 that Mr. Bush pointed out? Other local taxes, we had just started imposing the cigarette tax. So that didn't happen, right, during this fiscal year at all? Because we just started doing that July 1st. So
There was no cigarette tax for.
there was no cigarette tax. So any revenue from that would, in the future, next year, be captured in other local taxes?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
You've
so
got,
we do have something coming in, so we'll see where it goes. All right, I didn't have any other questions. Thank you very much, sir, for coming out this evening. Thanks for your report. Thank you, Ms. Hahn, for all of your hard work on this. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. All right. And Mr. Miller, it's my understanding you have provided us with a handout from Waste Management, but unfortunately, at the last minute, they've notified us they're not able to attend this evening.
That's correct. And so there is a handout. I would, I guess we could ask the representative to come back at one of the meetings in January. If there's any questions that you may have about this, I can get those back to them. But I think it was their intent to talk about, where things are after, at the year end. And so I think you have some statistics as well as, kind of major projects and highlights. I think the big thing that from our standpoint is that we have responsibility at a greater level now for the operation of the convenience centers. And that is something that I think future budgets are going to be impacted by. And I think we've talked about that. But, clearly we've done some things with the hours of operation at both the landfill and at the convenience centers. And so that will, are meant to enhance the service opportunities for the citizens. I know that Ms. Hart and I have talked about the decal and that all county residents get. I can tell you right now that Mr. Jenkins, our director, has indicated that they have found some that have been on the black market. Residents of other counties utilize that. There are people that are actually purchasing decals that are either fake or they purchase enough of them through the revenue commissioner and then somehow it ends up in the hands of a county resident from another county. So we are trying to do some things for enforcement reasons. But I think Waste Management, it continues to be a good relationship, and I would look forward to their presentation perhaps sometime in January.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any questions from members? All right, very good. Then we'll move on. Redistricting plan presentation by Mr. Kyle Conboy, Redistricting Committee. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is my second redistricting. I did the one in 2011 also. I missed the one in 2001 by a few months. Redistricting is the process of redrawing the boundaries of districts that elect representatives who serve specific geographic areas. Redistricting occurs every 10 years following the United States decennial census and is the responsibility of state and local governments. It is governed by federal and state constitutional and statutory laws. Some redistricting requirements include all redistricting lines changes must follow census blocks. All districts must be contiguous and compact. District populations must be as equal as possible, and population numbers cannot deviate by more than 10%. Districts cannot be drawn to discriminate based on race. Some redistricting challenges for this redistricting included COVID delays. The census data was delayed by more than 6 months Virginia for the first time required that incarcerated persons be counted in the census block data based on their residence. The state had 30 days to provide adjusted population numbers back to King George. 144 incarcerated persons were added back to the King George census data. Effective July 1st, precincts must be within a single congressional, Senate, and House district. Current draft state and congressional redistricting plans do not create split districts. This map shows how the James Madison and Shiloh districts are split between the 4th and 28th Senate districts. Notice Shiloh in the blue, that the Senate district line follows the power line and parts of Kings Highway. Another redistricting challenge was redrawing election districts based on census blocks. There are 458 census blocks in King George County, and they are oddly shaped. The census draws the blocks to physical features like roads, water features, power lines, medians, etc. This limits the options for redrawing election districts. This map shows the census blocks around the Fox's Run subdivision. The numbers in the map are the population numbers for the census blocks. In the right, on the right side is in the blue is a census block that has 1,110 persons in it, and it's 1,732 acres large. And on the left side, you see a yellow circle, and that is a census block that is the traffic circle in Fox's Run subdivision that has 0 persons in it, and it's 3 acres large. And there's also a pink sliver of a census block on the left, which is 0 persons and 20 acres large. The redistricting plan includes a redistricting app that's been on the county website since April, a 7-person redistricting committee. The redistricting committee met on November 19th to come up with a redistricting plan. The committee met again on November 29th to redraw election district lines and came up with redistricting option 1 and option 2. This is redistricting option 1. And the pre-redistricting census numbers are on the left and right margins. So you can see with the pre-redistricting numbers for James Monroe was minus 457 persons. And that's the deviation from the ideal district population, which is 6,717 persons. James Madison had 699 persons over the 6,717. Dahlgren was minus 165 persons, and Shiloh was minus 78 persons. So the redistricting changes are on the map. They're the red cross-hatched areas. And with the redistricting, all the election districts were under 1% deviation, with James Monroe having the highest population deviation of plus 58 persons, and Dahlgren had the lowest population deviation of minus 3 persons. This option was recommended by the redistricting committee due to it being more compact and less of an impact to citizens. This is redistricting option 2, which is a slight variation of redistricting option 1. With this option, the deviations all in James Madison and James Monroe went above 1% deviation. So again, this redistricting option 2 was less compact than option 1 and has more of an impact to citizens than option 1. So redistricting next steps: review Board of Supervisor and citizen comments on redistricting option 1 and option 2 maps. Wait for updated Senate, House, and congressional district lines from Richmond. Update redistricting plan and map if needed. Board of Supervisor approval of redistricting plan, map, and meets and bounds. And county attorney will submit enacted redistricting plan for a certificate of no objection by the Virginia Attorney General's Office pursuant to Virginia Code Section 24.2-129. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conboy. So, and if I could add, we discussed hosting a public workshop to socialize these two proposed maps with the community, and then having a public hearing here at the Board of Supervisors for us to approve. So would that meet our requirements, Ms. Lackey?
So under the Virginia Constitution and by statute, we are supposed to complete our redistricting by the end of the year. However, given the unusual nature of this year, we're in the same boat as many other jurisdictions. If we were to go ahead and have a prematurely adopted a districting plan, we could be in the position of having to redo it again at the beginning of the year. The main consequence for not doing it by the end of this year is that a citizen of the county could require that we do the redistricting, but you all are in the process, well into that process. So it would be kind of be self-fulfilling.
Thank you. So questions from members for Mr. Conboy first. Mr. Stono?
No questions, but thanks so much for your second redistricting and all the work that y'all do.
Ms. Bender?
Yes, and this is for the citizens watching. Can you go back to the two option maps? So for option one, that's the highlighted to the left would be the Sealston area, correct? Would that also encompass Oakland Park? What comes now into, would come out of James Madison into James Monroe?
Yeah, that would be the red hatched area. So that's above Caledon Road. So it would be above Oakland Park. Oakland Park would not be part of that.
Okay. And then added it into Dahlgren, where Mr. Bush lives. Basically, that area. But it's a little bit of a deviation, not a lot. And then option two, there's not a lot.
Right. It was just 2 census blocks that were changed in option 2. So it was pretty insignificant.
Well, thank you, because I'm just for clarification.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Mr. Bush?
No, Madam Chair, no questions.
All right, so what then is the will of the board with regard to, I don't think we need to schedule anything for next month right this minute, given the holidays are impending, but would you all like to move forward with having a public workshop to introduce these two maps to the public? We were thinking, foam core boards on easels and paper handouts and something brief to explain the process to citizens. Have a public workshop and then bring it back to the board ultimately for a public hearing and adoption. Does that work? Mr. Stonehill?
Be just one location for the whole county? I mean, would you do them in each district like they did before, like other times, or would we just do the one for all of them?
I would suggest we just do one in a central location only because it puts a demand on staff, because then we're going to need our staff members who were part of the committee to come to 4 more meetings next month to accomplish workshops, not meetings, but to accomplish that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one to cover all of it would be better than.
If that's okay with everyone else? Yes, one? Yes? Okay, Ms. Bender?
The only other thing is, because I think this is confusing to a lot in the public, is to make sure that we have to show about the census blocks, because people don't realize that it's very, very specific and they might not understand.
Yeah, with regard to why we drew the lines where we had to draw them. Yep. Good point. Mr. Bush, anything else?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I agree with the timeline sensitivity and access to YouTube. I think one meeting would suffice. Just as you described with the easels and the presentation as far as a workshop. The only thing I would recommend is to have GIS maybe available. If we could have like maybe a little kiosk somewhere where citizens can come in and say, like, if they come to the public workshop and they're really concerned, hey, what district am I going to be in? Because it's kind of hard to tell. If we had like a little kiosk where their address could be plugged in and you could just spout off, or someone spout off, this is the new district you're in, or you're staying in the same district, et cetera, I think that would be beneficial. That's all I have to add, Madam Chair.
Mr. Granger.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The only thing I guess I would ask is, I know we're still waiting for the state to come up with their plan as well. So this is, I mean, just a proposed one. And at the end of the day, whatever we're presenting, it might not be either of these, just in case. And so just to make sure, I guess, that it's properly conveyed to the citizens, that they don't think that there's like a bait and switch, that, you know, this is proposed because it is subject to the state's plan as well, which could impact our plan.
Yes, but as Kyle noted, Mr. Conboy noted, the current draft state and congressional redistricting plans do not create any split districts.
Currently.
Yes. I see the point you're making, yes, but that also goes with why we're waiting until next month to see if that gets finalized.
Hopefully it does. I just,
yeah,
you know, and it probably, who knows, it probably won't have an issue or an impact. I just don't want anyone to think there's any kind of change.
So how about if that happens where something changes dramatically, the redistricting committee can always meet again and do another set of maps.
That'll work.
I don't think any of us would have a problem with that. Okay, sounds great. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Conboy, for your presentation. Thank you, Mr. Burge, for coming out and supporting the work of the committee. Oh, and Mr. Pancotti is here too. Thank you, sir. All right, Native American History Trail presentation by Mr. Nick Miner, Director of Economic Development and Tourism. Welcome, Mr. Miner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the board. If I may, Madam Chair, if I can address Mr. Bush.
Yes, go ahead.
So, Mr. Bush, you were the chair when I first arrived here as Economic Development Director, and I just want to say thank you for your support of my department, and thank you for your service to the community. I'm sorry I don't have a beautiful plaque or a flag to give you this evening, but I'll be sure to. Great, and please take all the economic development notebooks you need before you leave. But I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate your service to the community. So this evening, Madam Chair and members of the board, I'm going to give you guys a quick presentation on the King George County Native American History and Cultural Trail. So this is a presentation that the University of Mary Washington gave to my department, as well as the Native tribes that we work with. And I essentially just took what they did and just brought it to you guys tonight. So I'm not going to show you guys what the signs are going to look like, because they still have some finishing touches that need to be made to it. Also, you know, it takes from the trail if you're presenting it in a public forum. But if you guys would still like to see those, I can definitely provide them to you after this meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the collaborators on this project was obviously the University of Mary Washington, the Historical Preservation Department, the Patawamak Indian Tribe, the Rappahannock Indian Tribe, Civil War Trails Organization, and obviously my department. So Preservation in the Community was the name of the class that actually worked on this project for us. Throughout the 5-month period that they did the study, my department, as well as the tribes, worked with this class to develop the narratives. My department basically gave them instructions on what we're trying to achieve with this trail. The ultimate goal for us, obviously, is to bring in tourism and to get tourists to our commercial areas. The goal for the tribes is to promote their heritage, and that there's still an active tribe in this area. And obviously the lesson for the UMW students to learn how to apply tourism to what it is that they're learning in school. So overall, it was a great collaboration. So these were the students that worked on the project for us. We're going to try to figure out a way to recognize them if we do get to a point where we're going to install the signs. So I'll be working with the university to figure out what that layout's going to look like. So one other group I want to point out is Print Jazz. They helped the students design the sign, so they're a professional graphic designing company that helped them lay it out. So the visual identity, I guess the overall theme that the students wanted to communicate throughout this trail was that King George County was the land between two rivers. So what they did was design, and I wish this pointer would work here, was design this motif right here. So throughout the signs and throughout this presentation, you'll continuously see this motif on it. So obviously one representing the Rappahannock, the other representing the Potomac River. So the other thing to really point out here is that they tried to identify locations. Almost every location is on the river or on the water. And I'll get to why that is as I move through the presentation. So on the signs, they're going to point out things like the eel trap that the Patawamak tribe used. And they're also going to point out the Dogue settlement, Native American settlement that now it no longer exists. However, this was something that was a settlement that was very prevalent in the county and that was unique to the county. So the maps that were provided by Kyle Conboy, they utilized these to sort of develop the trail. And let me just go on to the next slide because it sort of lays out the order. So what they put together for us was 7 signs that starts at the west end of the county in the Silson Sports Complex. It moves to the Dalgan Heritage Railroad Trail, and then you move to the Hop Yard Boat Landing, Belgrove, Wayside, Caledon, and Fairview Beach. Basically doing a loop and being able to hit every commercial area in the community, except for the courthouse area, but there's other signs that can be still developed. So the reason why that we identified the locations that we did, and we'll get to that in the Tourism Strategic Plan presentation, was that what we're trying to do is promote outdoor recreation. So you can build programming off each location that you land on. So for instance, if you're at Silston Sports Complex, there's something that you could do an outdoor rec there. If you're at the Dahlgren Heritage Trail, there's something you can do an outdoor rec there. Hop Yard Boat Landing, you can do a kayaking tour, you can do a canoeing tour, you can do fishing, and there's other ways to build off of that programming. So Wayside Park, when it returns, that could be a location as well. Caledon, obviously, there's outdoor rec throughout that park, and then Fairview Beach. Oh, and then just to sort of go back to the marketing strategies on it, to touch on that. So I mentioned the Dalgan Heritage Trail. So what each team of students did was propose a marketing strategy to promote that sign. So for Dalgan Heritage Trail, they proposed putting together a podcast. For Wayside Park, they propose utilizing what you call NFC chips. NFC chips, basically, if you bring your phone close to the sign, a website pops up or something pops up that can direct you or give you more information about that type of sign. For Caledon State Park, it was a scavenger hunt. So you can identify Native American items that may be laying around the park, whether it's a tree or a bird or something that has to do with that type of heritage. So the proposed signs, I already went over these, but these are the themes of each sign. So each team, so there were 6 teams, I believe, and each team put together an intro sign. So I have 6 different intro signs that we could potentially use. And then there's a railroad trail, the trade routes and trails, the legacy of Dogue, the North Bank hypothesis, the Patawamak watermen, forest resources, and then the creation story. So the creation story, to sort of hammer down on one of them, the creation story is obviously just like any other creation story, but this is specific to the Patawamak or Native American creation story. And they had to do extensive research to sort of dig into that. And again, every sign you see up here, proposed sign, has at least 2 other signs that they could build off of in that current location. So this is a project that has a lot of potential to expand. And these are just the locations that they decided on, but we provided them almost 13 to 14 locations, with one of them being Wilmot Landing. So I don't, Madam Chair, if you like, there has been a lot of media exposure for this type of trail. I can request, if we like to view this, it's about a 2-minute video that NBC Washington did on the trail in collaboration with UMW.
So could you just have the link sent to everyone?
Absolutely, yes.
And I know you have shared it on social media, and perhaps we could put it in the news flash on the bottom of the county website so that if we have citizens who don't participate on social media, they can still have a way to access it.
Yep, no problem.
Would that work with everyone? Yes? Go ahead, Ms. Benner.
Can you send that PowerPoint too?
Oh, yes, ma'am. No problem.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Really good information.
So next steps. So again, this is a project that is, I'm not going to say unlimited potential, but it's not just a King George County project anymore. So the university has already been reached out by Stafford County. They're probably going to get reached out to by the Northern Neck area and also the Middle Penn, because that's where a lot of these tribes are home based. The Patawamak their tribal centers in Stafford County, but there's so many different ways to sort of build off of this. And the university, the Historical Preservation Department, really sees this as an initiative that's going to put this area on the map from a tourism or ecotourism perspective. They see this as being something that's going to grow substantially. So they're trying to figure out ways to work with, whether it's the state parks or the other localities, to sort of grow it. So what we're looking at now is potentially bringing on 2 interns this spring semester to finish our project from the Historical Preservation Department, and then also looking at the future proposed signs in different locations. The next thing we have to do also is coordinate with the owners at the proposed sites. The parks and rec areas are fairly easy. That's county-owned property. But the state park areas, we have to get their permission if we're going to put anything up on there. But I have word from UMW that the state parks have already reached out to the school, and I'm pretty sure we can get those done. I've already spoken to Belgrove, DHRT, and a gentleman from Fairview Beach to put those signs up on the privately held property. There shouldn't be any issue. So the installation and the funding possibilities. So we're going to partner with the Civil War Trails organization because they have a history in designing these and understanding what they look like and what you need to be doing as far as the logistics of it. On the funding side of it, obviously we have the TAC fund, but there's additional funding from the Virginia Tourism Corporation to utilize to install these. And what we're looking at, based off what we spent on the Civil War Trails, it's about $2,000 per each sign. So I'm estimating probably a $16,000 to $18,000 investment if it was to come out of the TAC fund or whether we use the grant money from the Virginia Tourism Corporation. So, and that concludes my presentation, Madam Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Minor. Any questions from members? Mr. Granger? Mr. Stonehill? Ms. Bender? Mr. Bush? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nick, thank you for your comments earlier. But Fairview Beach, you just said that you spoke to a gentleman. So Fairview Beach, the waterfront is owned by an LLC. So if you're putting the sign on private property, are you talking residential or are you talking about you've met with a representative from the LLC to put a sign on the waterfront, which the public aspect?
So, sir, I've spoken to Guy Booth, who is the owner and an EDA member, and he can help me get connections with the owners of that LLC to see if we can put the sign up. The best thing about these signs is that if we can't put it on Fairview Beach, we can obviously identify another location because we can move them, and we're still in the planning stages of it. So.
Okay. What I would recommend is get with the representative from the LLC, and Guy is a great contact to have to network that, but you definitely want to meet with the LLC to see if we can get that. So I'm really, well, you know what? It's not discussion, it's only questions, so I'm going to keep to the format. That's all I have question-wise, Madam Chair.
I didn't have any questions. I want to thank you for bringing this to us. I saw the video of the news report, and to have something like this in our community here and making a major news market in Northern Virginia is very exciting. So thanks for making all of us here aware of what's going on. Mr. Bush, did you have something to add?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Nick, I want to expand upon what I said earlier. Thank you for your comments. When I served as chair, we had Dr. Neiman Young, who was very proud of negotiating your acquisition from the FRC. So you've brought a lot of things to this county. I'm very appreciative of your dedication. We've had a revolving door prior to your coming here when it came to Economic Development Director. And I'm very happy. My engagements with you have been very enlightening. I'm very optimistic of the future because of the endeavors you're seeking. And I would like to expand upon what Ms. Kupka said. This is great. And I'll go back to 4 years ago when we were discussing this, my former colleague, John Jenkins, worked so hard to bring the Civil War Trail signs to King George, and that has spurred a little interest in the county. And I think this, in collaboration with that and other endeavors that are coming down the pipe, is only going to add to it. So I'm very excited to see this. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we will close that one out. Thank you, Mr. Minor. And we will move on to your next one, Tourism Strategic Plan.
So thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm going to give you guys an overview of the planning insights and report of the tourism strategic plan. You should have had the strategic plan included in your board packet. Did you guys receive? Okay, thank you, ma'am. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right on in. So this is going to be a long presentation. I'm going to try to move through it as much as I can. It's hard to cram that much information in a few short slides. Apologize, sir. So stakeholder engagement. So the Department of Economic Development and Tourism Advisory Committee conducted 2 focus groups before going into a tourism stakeholder survey. So in those 2 focus group meetings, we considered regional collaboration and obviously our existing tourism industry stakeholders. So we had nonprofits, we had for-profits, Parks and Rec. And then in those conversations, we exercised to cover some topics such as long-term needs of the county, strengths and barriers challenging the county today, what's the mission of tourism in the TAC committee, and what does tourism look like in King George in the next 5 years? So for our stakeholder survey, we had over 101 responses. 75% of them were residents, 15% were business owners. When you went to the survey, you could choose multiple, basically multiple groups that you represent. So that's why that number doesn't equal 100%, just so we're clear. The theme of it was the stakeholders were asked a variety of questions intended to shed light on the following categories. So opportunities and barriers, itinerary development, target demographics, brand and reputation, tourism asset identification, and tourism support. So the next part of this, we're going to go over tourism assets, the visitor profiles, and brand reputation. So our reputation today, so we asked 2 questions. We asked more than that, but these 2 questions sort of narrowed that down for us the most. So using any number between 0 and 10, 0 being the worst, what number would you use to rate King George as a location to visit? The weighted average of that was 5.6. So that's not exactly a number that you want to see if you want to become a tourism destination or a tourism locality. So the next was, why did you rate us that way? So it's not many activities or historical sites. It's not a tourism destination. And then on the positive side, it's just sort of, it's a great location, it's differentiated by much of the Nova. It needs just a little bit more restaurants, breweries, B&Bs, fantastic nature and outdoors. Then there's also could offer more to attract visitors. So these aren't things that, we don't already understand. However, this just makes it real for us, right? We have a starting point. So tourism asset inventory and potential. So in your opinion, the question was, in your opinion, what are the 4 most important tourism assets in King George County? The rivers, obviously, the trails, historical locations, the wineries, and public parks was a close 5th. So again, the community and the stakeholders of tourism identified these locations. And that's what we built this strategic plan off of. So it's tourism asset hierarchy and itinerary development. So where should the focus of its marketing be directed towards? And we ranked them out here. Outdoor rec was number 1. I'm calling this business tourism being your breweries, your wineries. When we have a brewery established here, just these locations that draw people into the community, for that meet and greet networking type of opportunities. Historical landmarks and locations, and then 4th was events. And then for identifying an itinerary, asking the people who are in the community, where would you take someone if you were to come to King George, if you were to have them come to King George? It all centered around outdoor rec. It also centered around Belgrove, the trail system, and then there would be comments like, getting back to that regional side of tourism, I would take them to Caledon, or I would go to Westmoreland State Park, or I'd go to Fredericksburg, or I'd take them to a brewery in Fredericksburg. So tourism in nature is going to always be regional. And that's one thing that everybody in this industry sort of understands. When you visit DC, you don't care that, Arlington National Park is in Virginia, you're there to see that area in its entirety. So same sort of concept with what we're looking at for King George, the Fredericksburg region, and the Northern Neck region. So our visitor profiles, what the TAC and the department identified was families, the business traveler, outdoor recreation. So as far as the business traveler goes, we get a lot of our hotel revenue from the base. So that business traveler is going to be looking for the wineries, the breweries, and the restaurants. So that's sort of why this is identified as a market that we need to focus on and attract. The outdoor recreationist is always going to be one that we're going to have to target and develop assets, tourism assets and activities for them to work on. And then families, we thought about families from obviously the outdoor rec side, but we're thinking of it more from a sports tourism side. If we're going to put together programming, if we're going to put together assets, we need to always keep them in mind in what we're doing. So are things accommodating for them as well? So now getting down to the meat and potatoes of of the tourism strategic plan, the strategic anchors, objectives, and obviously the strategic marketing. So the mission statement that the TAC and the department came up with based off the information we received was promote King George as a gathering location for all by offering experiences through collaboration, creativity, and convenience. Our vision statement is King George County, a proud tourism community at the convergence of history, technology, and nature. Again, sort of getting back to the reoccurring themes, you ask someone who's not from this community but knows about this community, the first thing they bring up, they're going to bring up Caledon, they're going to bring up Dahlgren, and they're going to bring up the beauty of the community. So we tried to incorporate that in our vision statement, and then we also tried to, call ourselves in 5 years, we want to be called a tourism community, and so we want to center it around these three factors. So as far as building a reputation, so when you come to a community, you come to a Williamsburg, if you come to any area that is representing tourism, you want to build that reputation. When they leave us, we want them to remember us as being welcoming, we want to inclusive, authentic, and unique. And getting back to that authentic and unique, that's sort of what we're trying to achieve with the Native American trails. You can't get that anywhere else. There's only one Patawomack and there's only one Rappahannock tribe, and they settled here. So these are the type of experiences we try to create moving forward the next 5 years. So we laid out 10 objectives. I'm not going to go through every last one of them because we sort of pointed out a couple of them in the regional collaboration. I touched on sports tourism. The Native American Trails is definitely that outdoor rec and product development. I think the main things I really want to cover is the marketing, content, and materials. So I'm laying out just the little blurbs here, develop more content to market. One of the issues I got here 2 years ago, it's, do we have a photo library? Do we have videos? Do we have brochures? We have to develop these things. We have to have something to market before we start spending dollars on marketing. So the first year I got here, we were able to get the tourism website up. So that's one step. But now the next thing is we need the content to fill that website. We need the brochures to hand out throughout the community. It's just, it just takes time to build these types of things. And then on the marketing, spending, and metrics, one thing I want to put out, so far, I just mentioned what the TAC was, we laid out, where our marketing dollars or where the TAC dollars have went, and the majority of it has went to events. The TAC in my department has not really spent a lot of money just on the county itself, marketing as a whole overall. So we spent, you spend $20,000 on one event. Well, that's a one-time pulse event. And the dollars aren't getting spread out over the 365 days that they should be. So we laid out like we're going to split our budget, or not split our budget, but allocate money directly towards the county marketing 365 days a year, whether that's digital or whether that's through print. So that's one thing that we want to try to address moving into the 2022 fiscal year. And then obviously river access, this is in the tourism strategic plan, in the economic development strategic plan. We also wanted to put it back into the tourism strategic plan, but looking at river access and still trying to identify opportunities to either acquire land or partner with private landowners to utilize it for our tourists and visitors in the future. I guess one other thing I want to point out is the historical education and storytelling. So this is going to be an emphasis in our tourism strategic plan moving forward, because we feel like these are the things that sort of keep people coming back. These are the things that sort of make us unique and authentic. The outdoor rec is what keeps people coming back. So as you come to a Caledon or as you come to the rivers to enjoy what they have to offer, the historical storytelling that makes King George unique is what will separate us from us being Westmoreland County or us being Lancaster County, because they have both rivers as well. But what makes us unique is the history that we carry, the people, the land. So on the strategic marketing side of it, so I'm just sort of laying out what we're looking at or how we want to. So I guess I should just frame it like this. If you are a consultant or if you are a business or if you're somebody that we're going to work with in the future, you can go to this tourism strategic plan and know what markets we're trying to target, who we're trying to target, what their income level is, and also how we want to position ourselves in our marketing. So if you put together a marketing piece for us, we want them to know that, this is an experience the outdoor and riverfront adventures on the Rappahannock and Potomac rivers. Experience a quiet and peaceful getaway that provides a sense of tranquility for visitors and tourists. That positioning is how we want to position ourselves in the market, separate from Stafford, Spotsylvania, and the city of Fredericksburg. So we look at ourselves as being the outdoor rec location for the region. If the city of Fredericksburg is going to be the colonial, the downtown, maybe a little younger vibe for our tourists, and Stafford is going to be the colonial period, the boyhood home of George Washington, and Spotsylvania is going to be the Civil War, then the Civil War battlefield, that history, then we want to be the outdoor rec part of that region. And the same thing goes for the Northern Neck. If Colonial Beach is going to be, the playground of the Potomac, then we want to be the outdoor rec area for that Northern Neck area. This is where you come if you want to enjoy the rivers, if you want to have a peaceful and quiet experience. And these things are identified by what our citizens told us throughout the survey, what the TAC consulted on. These are the things that we know are us. We're not going to try to be anything else. This is who we are. And we're not going to necessarily try to, spend money or adjust it for anybody. We're just going to embrace who we are and what we have here. So moving forward, and I'm just going to summarize some things here at the end. So just some quick deliverables if this strategic plan is adopted. So social media engagement metrics and website engagement metrics. Modifications to the TAC application so that we have some standard impact deliverables. That's the most consultant phrase I've ever written in my life. So we also want to align that application with our strategic plan. So as it stands right now, the application is fine. However, there are going to be some things that we want to standardize as far as what they give us in our after action reports. So they won't be, this group reports these type of numbers, this other group reports these type of numbers. We want to be able to give them a spreadsheet or some sort of worksheet so that it's standardized. We know what the impacts are for everybody. If they got a reach on their social media of 13K, or it reached 13,000 people, and then the other event only reached 5, then we know that this event is a bigger hit than the next event. So we know not to put as much money into this event as the next one. As far as marketing content development goes, so generating more photos, generating more blogs, building out itineraries, creating videos, and creating more brochures. So the only recommended action I have, just to sort of get a consensus from the board, the TAC subgroups. So currently we have 10 existing subgroups. As it currently stands now, the TAC and the department agreed that these don't really align with where we're sort of going with our tourism strategic plan. And we also don't necessarily require 10 members on this committee. So we all discussed it out. And so we currently have a 7-member subgroup committee that includes agritourism. So basically replacing agriculture with agritourism. And then the arts side, making that arts and events, that'll be Miss Becky Stewart. The civic groups, Jaron Haynes will remain there. History, that will remain Bob Baird. Hotels and lodging will be Miss Lisa Caswell from Hospitality LLC, basically the Holiday Inn Express. Outdoor rec will remain with Warren Veazey. And then the marketing promotion side, or you could actually put a slash next to that and say business tourism, will remain with D. Strauss. So just to summarize everything, some major themes. So again, like I said, we want to stand on the corner of outdoor rec and historical storytelling throughout the region. We need to embrace our rivers and trails. They are our best tourism assets. Business tourism is going to be our major draws in the coming years. Sports tourism is a new target market for us. Think about it as like product development. This is something that we want to try to aspire for in the next 5 years, whether that's identifying a new location or if we already have that location, to put together a master plan or to put together some plan to recruit, whether that's an adults or adult sports team, or not necessarily a team, but I guess I want to say an organization, whether it's Little League Baseball or softball. Again, our tourists, we know where our tourists are going to come from. Nobody from Europe is going to get on a plane and fly to King George County, but somebody from Harrisonburg, Virginia, or somebody from Pennsylvania, somebody from Baltimore, DC, Richmond will come see us. An emphasis on developing outdoor tourism assets, and also making sure that we have the content to match. So if we put up this trail, we have the content ready to rock with it. So the brochures, the videos, the photography, or whatever comes along with those assets. The other thing is to establish metrics immediately. We all know what gets measured gets done. And then also build a reputation as a tourism destination over the next 5 years. So again, I just want to thank the Tourism Advisory Committee for working with me over this long period of time. I can't believe I forgot Miss Becky's last name on here. I apologize to her, but Mr. Baird, Mrs. Haynes, Mrs. Caswell, Ms. Strauss, Mr. Hall, Becky, and then Mr. Veazey. I thank them all for working with me and working with the community over these past almost 12 months here to get this to you guys. So thank you all. I'm happy to answer any questions. I have the tourism strategic plan in front of me right now. So if you guys have any questions or if there's any edits or if there's any comments you'd like to make on that document, I'm happy to answer your question.
Thank you, Mr. Minor. So let's first, you did ask us for one recommended action. So let's handle that. Let's tackle that first because that was a specific request. And then we'll move on to questions and discussion about the plan as a whole. All right. So I note there are 10 subgroups currently. 3 of them are currently vacant. Do my colleagues have any problem with just doing the reassignment that has been suggested? It would still keep 7 current actual members. They just would have a different sort of assignment or designation on the committee. What is the pleasure of the board with regard to that? Anyone? Ms. Bender, you look like you want to start. Go ahead.
Yeah, when I first got on the board, I didn't understand why we had so many. This makes sense, and I think the titles make sense to what the plan is that you've put together. I have no problem going with 7. I thought there was too many in the beginning is what I'm trying to say.
Mr. Granger?
I'm amenable to the changes as presented by Mr. Minor.
Thank you. Mr. Stonehill?
I think it's a much better group cut down the way it is. I think they were too many folks in that last group, but I don't have a problem with that now.
Okay, Mr. Bush? Okay, I'm fine with that as well. So do we need a motion to go ahead and could I get a motion on that, please?
So just to make sure I'm tracking, there's no, I know we have several vacancies. And so what this would really end up doing is to consolidate it down to, it would be the same people that are currently on it and it would consolidate it so all the seats are filled because that's how many people we have as well.
Correct. Correct. The other thing is that, we do have a TAC charter.
Yes.
It does not lay out in that charter how many people should be in that group or what the subcommittee group should be called. This is identified by the board department.
Okay.
Just to clarify.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Then I would like to make a motion to modify the Tourism Advisory Committee's membership to remove or to be the 7 groups of agritourism, arts and events, civics groups, history, hotels and lodging, outdoor recreation, marketing and promotion, and to be filled in those roles by Mr. David Hall, Ms. Becky Stewart, Ms. Jaren Hayes, Mr. Bob Baird, Ms. Lisa Caswell, Mr. Warren Veazey, and Ms. D. Strauss as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. All right. And so just to frame the conversation, my intention in having Mr. Minor present this to us tonight was not for adoption. This, to me, why I had him bring this was a first look for the board to have a first look at it. So I don't think we need to get into, oh, well, I have an edit on page 7. I need you to change this to this. So I wanted him to bring this to the board to start the conversation, start the dialogue, and see if the board wanted to digest it a little more and perhaps host a joint work session with the tourism committee in the future, in the new year, to flesh it out with them and get their feedback, because again, they are our appointees. They are the tourism professionals who advise us. And so we just want to come together with them before finalizing this. If that is consistent with the will of the board, would that plan work? Yes? Okay. So then with that, I will open it up for questions or discussion about the plan in general. Mr. Granger, would you like to start?
Yes, ma'am, I appreciate it. I don't really have any questions. I did read through it. I wouldn't mind the opportunity to just digest it a little bit more. But I just want to say thank you, Mr. Minor, and thank you to the Tourism Advisory Committee as well. I really appreciate the effort you guys have put in. I really like some of the recommended actions in regards to maybe updating the TAC submission form and providing some metrics on the outs coming out of the events. Really like some of those things I saw coming out of that. So like I said, really like what you've done. Like to digest a little bit more, but yeah, I think this is great. I really think you guys have done a lot of good work here. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Mr. Stonehill.
Thanks for the report. I read through this pretty well. I really like it. I think you all did a great job. But then how do we stay that course and when we follow that is the key. I ended up having a meeting the other day with a guy that does all the social media for Northumberland, their Chamber of Commerce and everything. Had a great big magazine that had everything. Those little towns down there do a great job. So, once we get the stuff to put on the website and things to get people in here, that's great. But I really think it's great. I think y'all did a great job on it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Ms. Bender?
I want to thank you for your very comprehensive presentation and the brochure. One question I just had is, when I first moved here, I understood the land between two rivers and that it was really it was very unique. Is, I guess, in the future addressing that we don't have a lot of access points to the river?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, so ma'am, there are properties that are going to come available in the future. I think for us, it's just sort of figuring out, is there money to acquire them, and do we want to make this a priority? There's so many other issues in the county that need to be addressed before we start talking about acquiring land. I do understand that, but I don't think it's something that we should leave, that we should forget about, especially if the right opportunity presents itself. So.
Yeah, I was thinking of public-private partnerships too, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nick, thank you for this presentation, and thank you, Madam Chair, for putting this on the agenda to afford me an opportunity to speak to it before my departure. So I think it's rational and logical and realistic, understanding that, a lot of people throw around the term tourism like we're a Williamsburg or a Fredericksburg, and we are not. So I'm glad you took that approach. Ms. Bender is absolutely correct about the river access. So back when we were looking for the land mitigation for VDOT with the bridge coming in, it was a problem. We identified that in our comprehensive plan as access to the rivers. It's problematic. So I understand we do have a lot of things in the county going on, but I do believe that our identifier as being that land between two rivers, that would merit something for land acquisition. If we were able to get something suitable, I think that would be huge. The trails, you hear a lot of talk about the trails, and it's a very good point to emphasize because we do have trails. And what you are also working on that you presented earlier, I think all that's going to tie into. As far as festivals though, so the first year of I think they call it the Jazz Festival that they held over at Mount Bethel, so very low attendance. I was not optimistic. But then the second year that they held it, the numbers went up drastically and it started attracting people. So as soon as you gain that momentum, it's going to grow every year. Well, we did something at Sealston, which was constructed as an events complex in addition to being a sports complex. And then we let it go. I think maybe that's something that needs to be explored in the future. So you stated earlier that when you were given the identifiers, Fredericksburg, you know, the younger crowd, Spotsylvania is known for the Civil War, et cetera, et cetera. Well, if we're the outdoor venue, then maybe we should be holding the festivals and not Fredericksburg Fairgrounds. I think there's a way that we could start attracting those types of events, you know, beer, bourbon, and barbecue, everything they got going on over there. That's something that we can bring here. And the wineries are huge. I mean, when my family comes visit from South Louisiana, we take them to Ingleside. It's just habitual. Now we got wineries in King George that we could start taking them to, Back Porch, Whitehall, et cetera, et cetera. And I can't wait to see the breweries come to King George. I hope you guys make that happen. So that's all I have really is great plan, realizing what the challenges are. But I think you're looking in the right area. So thank you very much for this presentation. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. So Nick, thank you very much. And thank you to your staff for all of their work on this and the Tourism Advisory Committee and our citizens who participated. I really like what you have put together here. I don't mind telling you that I know you had a couple of stakeholder workshops and you had the butcher paper, the easel in the back stairwell for a while. And every time I saw it and the lack of identity that people saw of King George tourism and the lack of branding, eventually I turned the easel so I didn't have that staring in my face every time I had to go up the back steps. So this here makes me very pleased to see how you were able to identify, did that SWOT analysis, and came up with a path forward, recognizing the points that people made, but also coming up with a way to try to address them. So that's key. And then the other thing I would suggest is how we stick to this. And I feel very strongly we need to start doing this with the Economic Development Strategic Plan as well. And the comprehensive plan is when staff brings forward items for action and maybe this, I shouldn't be just addressing you, I should be addressing Mr. Miller and my colleagues. When staff brings us items in the board packet, in the memo to the board with the recommended action, staff should be listing what section of the tourism strategic plan this action would satisfy. What section of the economic development strategic plan would this acquisition or whatever it is that staff wants us to approve or authorize or spend money on? How we stick to our plans is we make staff go back to the plan and say, yes, this is what the board identified as a priority. And that's how then we hold ourselves accountable and the citizens hold us accountable as well. So, looking forward really to working with you and your staff and the committee on this going forward. Thanks again for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Have a good night. All right, let's see. Action items 12-11, Department of Finance, Professional Public Audit Services Contract. Welcome, Ms. Pitts.
I think this is on. Now it is. Okay. I am here before you this evening to request that you authorize the county administrator to issue a notice of award and to execute an agreement with Robinson Farmer Cox and Associates for professional public audit services, subject to approval of the agreement as deformed by the county attorney. We received proposals for this solicitation on November 15th. Staff evaluated the proposals and cost estimates and determined that RFC met the requirements of the county. Funding is available in the FY '22 budget in the amount of $69,970. Price escalation for the remaining fiscal years in the base period will be the lower of CPI or 3%. The term for the base period is 5 years with the 2 optional 12-month renewals. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions? Anyone? No? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the county administrator to issue a notice of award and to execute an agreement with Robinson Farmer Cox and Associates for professional public audit services, subject to approval of the agreement as to form by the county attorney.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I believe and nothing against Robinson Farmer and Cox and Associates, but have we been using the same firm over and over for our audits? Should we maybe look at getting a different maybe viewpoint or lens for the next round? Just something to consider. Usually when you're paying somebody to look at something, they tend to be kinder and gentler, especially if they're used to doing it for King George, the audit. Maybe it might be good to look outside and see, maybe gain a different perspective. Just something for thought.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Ms. Pitts, in answering Mr. Bush's question, can you please advise the board report states on November 15th, 2021, the proposals and cost estimates were received and evaluated. How many were received?
2 proposals.
2. Okay, so there was 1 competing proposal to consider. All right, any other discussion on the matter? So we have a motion properly seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Pitts.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well. All right, next item, 12-12, Department of Finance, change order number 3 associated with the Fairview Beach Riverbank Stabilization Project. Welcome, Ms. Turner.
I'm Angela Turner, Finance Procurement Specialist. Change order number 3 associated with the Fairview Beach Riverbank Stabilization Project. I'm here today to authorize the county administrator to execute a change order with Finish Line Environmental to increase the contract price of the Fairview Beach Riverbank Stabilization Project by $6,173.20. In April 2021, a construction service agreement was executed with Finish Line Environmental for the Fairview Beach Riverbank Stabilization Project. Recently, Finish Line Construction and their concrete subcontractor, Industrial Concrete, were prepping the foundation soils of the concrete seawall, footing and observed unsuitable foundation soils. Due to the condition of the subgrades in this area, the width of the undercut area was increased to 7 feet versus the design footing width of 6 feet. Undercut volumes were quantified by field measurements as agreed to by Finish Line, Schneibel, and the county representatives. The change order request has been reviewed and is recommended by Schneibel Engineering and the county engineer. This change order will increase the total cost of the agreement with Finish Line Environmental to $1,683,488.45. The change order will increase the contract time by 5 days. The date of the final completion will now be January 31st, 2022. There are funds available in the project construction contingency for this change order.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. So I'm going to start with Mr. Bush because this is your district, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you very much. I would just like to know, do you have the current balance of the contingency fund available?
Yes, it's $77,415.37.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
All right, Ms. Bender, Mr. Stonehill.
That was my question. It was answered. Thank you.
Mr. Granger, do I have a motion?
I move to authorize the county administrator to execute a change order with Finish Line Environmental to increase the contract price of the Fairview Beach Riverbank Stabilization Project by $6,173.20.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Turner.
Thank you. Best wishes, Mr. Bush, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to discussion items 12-13, GWRC Resilience Plan, Local Plan Development and Adoption. So I put this on here for board discussion this evening. Ms. Binder is familiar with why it's on here. She serves with me on George Washington Regional Commission. And I believe next month that board will consider adoption of a regional resiliency plan. Why this is important to our community is if you wish to apply for funding in the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, you must have adopted a resiliency plan. And we know that that's important, particularly to the Dahlgren District, because the state has already identified the Dahlgren District as an area of concern with regard to flooding, and they hosted a workshop a couple months ago regarding the same. So I want to hear what the pleasure of the board is with regard to directing staff in community development to start developing our proposed local resiliency plan. And GWRC believes it could be something as simple as maybe a 1 or 2 page document on our part, and then incorporating by reference the GWRC plan. So I don't think this would be a huge, heavy lift on staff to accomplish this, given that there's a framework already from GWRC. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on having staff start working on that for future presentation to the board. Go ahead, Mr. Granger.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That was my biggest question, is just how much effort it was going to be. But yeah, if it's not all that, regardless, I think it makes sense. You make a good case for why it's important. I would agree. Let's move forward with having staff work to put that together and bring it to the board.
Thank you. Mr. Stonehill.
Yes, we need to go ahead forward with that. It's we spoke about that at the Rappahannock River Basin the other day as well, and we got to get this in and the application in to get this last round of grant that's coming out. But we got to get all this straightened out with GWRC first. So yes, let's move ahead with it.
Thank you. Ms. Bender?
The one thing I'm going to point out, I pulled up the plan here, and in the beginning of it, it gives the needs to support future resiliency goals. And number 6, creating a plan to strategically address the environmental justice populations in the George Washington Region Committee. And I'm going to bring this up when it comes up to GWRC. Need some clarification, because as you guys know, that I was on the one RAP with the Air Permit Control Board. It's a long name. But they haven't even defined fully what that means. And there's environmental mapping tools that are being created with DEQ. And there's actually a department now of DEQ for environmental justice. So I will bring up that just needs a little more clarification. So I just wanted to make you aware.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I don't know if this directly relates to what Ms. Bender just pointed out. First off, I do agree we need to move forward, but I just would like to bring your attention that Governor-elect Youngkin has already pledged to withdraw the state from a regional carbon market comprising of 10 coastal and New England states. Governor-elect Youngkin denounced the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative as a carbon tax that is fully passed on to the taxpayers, and said he would remove
Mr. Bush,
Virginia.
I'm sorry, sir. I don't mean to interrupt you. We're going to talk specifically about that in item 12-14, legislative priorities.
Oh, okay. I thought that's what Ms. Bender was just pointing out as item 6.
No, she was pointing out the relevance of the air control committee that she's been working with regard to the mention in the resiliency plan.
Okay.
So if you have more beyond Reggie, great, go right ahead. But if you're just talking
Well, if
about Reggie,
Reggie's- Yep.
I'm going to bring up Reggie in the next item, the legislative priorities.
If Reggie's not, if that group is not a byproduct of Reggie, then
We're going to get to that in the next discussion, yes.
Madam Chair, can I just add clarification? The Environmental Justice Act is totally different. It's a 2020 act that was put in last year by Governor Northam and the legislator, and it does go into this resiliency plan. But on the counties, if it fully gets implemented, there is some cost because you would have to add more people in community development, and that's part of the.
it's getting canceled.
Well, I'm just making everybody aware of it.
All right, anyone else? So is the pleasure of the board then to direct staff to start working on a local resiliency plan? All right, Mr. Miller, you'll get with community development staff on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. All right, next item 12-14, legislative priorities for January 12th General Assembly. So I put this on here just to make sure everyone on the board is aware. I know VACO adopted its legislative priorities for the next general session. So if you haven't had a chance to read those in detail, please do so. But did want to point out a few things, make you all aware of, and so we can start discussing going forward so that knowing we have our organizational meeting January 4th, then we won't have another real content meeting until January 18th. So the session starts January 12th. I want to make sure these items are on the board's radar. So the first was, go ahead, Mr. Bush, was the regional greenhouse gas initiative. So do you want to add to what you started, sir?
It just looks like Governor-elect Youngkin, when he comes into office, is going to basically cancel it via executive order.
So I am tracking that. I know Mr. Stonehill and I had a conversation about this last week because that Reggie fully funds the Community Flood Preparedness Fund that we just spoke about applying for grants. So I think probably, and I don't mean to speak for you, Mr. Stonehill, but I'm guessing why you made the comment we need to get in for this last round is if Reggie gets canceled and there's no future funding, this next round would be the last round of the Community Fund Preparedness Fund. So if there is an opportunity, we really want to try to take advantage of it. And then outside of that, it may just be that we see if any member of the legislature introduces alternative funding sources for the Community Flood Preparedness Fund that could be used instead of Reggie. So I just want to make everyone going forward aware of what's going on with that. Senate Bill 4, limitations on duration of executive orders. If everyone is not aware, that would limit the governor's executive authority for an executive order to 45 days. So let's be thinking about that, and if that is something that we might want to eventually write a letter of support. Repeal of the grocery tax. I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing, yes, there would have a local impact. No, there would not have a local impact. So we may need to wait and see what that looks like, what that legislation looks like.
I'm looking forward to the debate.
Yeah. And then the 5% raises. I know this came up in our Department of Social Services Administrative Board meeting last night for all state employees. It's also been proposed for school employees and for deputies, law enforcement officers, and jail employees. And it would be 5% per year each of the next 2 years. And where that 5% comes from is 2.5% is from the state and 2.5% is from the locality. So I just want to make sure everybody is thinking about, well, it won't be necessarily your concern, Mr. Bush, unless you want to come give public comment during our upcoming budget work sessions, but everybody is thinking about possible budgetary impacts that could create. Did anyone else have anything else they want to add to the discussion? You sure, Mr. Bush?
Okay.
Go ahead.
So chances are you will see me for public comment during that time, because I also serve as chairman of another organization. What I did want to bring up is that with the 5%, it all sounds well and good. Do our deputies, our teachers, our firefighters deserve more money? Absolutely. Those in social services, do they deserve more money? Absolutely. The problem is when the state says that they're giving money, so 2.5% from the state, 2.5 local match, but that's only for state comp board positions. So we have positions outside of that, which means we'd be carrying the full brunt of that. With the outlook on things, it seems like we pretty much have our revenues for the cigarette tax already leveraged. Hopefully next year, we might see more revenues from that and maybe be able to address this. I would love to say this should be something that the county should absolutely support, but it's ultimately going to be 10%. So over a period of 2 years, if you're looking at a budget over a 2-year period and we're 2.5, that's 5% that we're carrying locally in that 2-year time frame, but also 10% for those that aren't covered by the state. So I think it could be quite a gut punch. I think they maybe need to relook at this. I'm not saying that we should be stalwart or absolutely against any type of review of compensation, but the way it's currently being articulated, there's no way we should support this from a local perspective. And yeah, I hate to say it, but I mean, it would affect people like my wife. She would get a raise, so she's probably not happy that I'm saying this. But I mean, that's just the way it is. As the taxpayer, steward of the taxpayers' money, there's no way this is something we could support as it's currently being presented. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Anyone else want to add anything before we move on to the next discussion item? All right. And then I will have something related to this item, but I'm going to bring it up in the next discussion item because it's directly dealing with the reassessment. So I have the reassessment back on here for discussion. I want to recognize and thank Commissioner Hart for everything she has done to attempt to answer the questions that the board brought to you during 2 meetings. And you sent them on to the assessor to try to get answers for us and for our constituents, because that's frankly why we're asking, because we're still getting phone calls and emails, and I'm sure you probably are too. So thank you for that, Ms. Hart. So why I brought this up is we still are seeing, in some cases, a failure to, not from Ms. Hart's office, but from the assessor, a failure to respond to constituents, whether those are return phone calls or return emails. So can I poll my members and see if everyone else is still having that experience? Or yes, Ms. Bender, yes, Mr. Bush?
I really haven't heard anything more on it.
Okay. Mr. Stonehill, yes. Mr. Granger. Okay. Okay. So why I bring this is I pointed out, or I asked a question the last time Commissioner Hart was here with regard to Code of Virginia, Section 58.1-3331, public disclosure of certain assessment records. And I read the section, and Commissioner Hart sent the question on to the assessor. It was, how is the assessor complying with the code section that states, upon request of a taxpayer or his duly authorized representative whose property has been assessed for taxation, the assessing officer shall provide a written explanation or justification for an increase in the property's assessed value. So the answer that the assessor provided to Ms. Hart, and she forwarded on to me, was that sales ratio studies, 3 residential, and a market study, 1 commercial, are all written justification. These were delivered. So in my mind, that doesn't sound like he is addressing the individual taxpayer's request for the written explanation or justification. That to me is very general and generic. And to me, that doesn't, I don't think, now I'm not a lawyer, but that doesn't satisfy to me the code requirements. It certainly wouldn't satisfy me as a taxpayer. So I want to see what my colleagues would think, because I kind of would like to see if one of our legislators would introduce an amendment to the way the bill is written that would define what constitutes a written explanation or justification, so that, because this to me looks like a loophole, a legal loophole that maybe needs to be tightened up so that this doesn't happen to us or any other community in the future, or any other taxpayer, quite frankly. So what would be, Mr. Bush, you have your hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I absolutely agree. So what I would liken the response to is if a realtor were to pull comps for a piece of property. Now, for a bank, if you're going to refinance your home, they would assign an appraiser to actually come look at your home and then do an individual appraisal of that property. They don't pull comps. Comps is something very general. From his statement, it sounds like that's exactly what he did. Market study, comparison of 3 like properties or whatever. That's pulling comps. That is not an appraisal. So I believe, I don't even think we need the clarity from, I'm not a lawyer, but that doesn't sound like he met the criteria as it was laid out. That's my opinion.
So do you have a position with regard to asking for sponsorship for legislation that would spell this out more clearly as well? Okay. Ms. Bender?
Yes, because I want to bring out one taxpayer who actually spoke to me and said they got an answer and they didn't even understand the comparables that were given. So that would be definitely.
Mr. Stonehill?
Yeah, absolutely. That should be cleared up. I mean, just to take 3 different properties and just, take a general amount on top of that, that doesn't answer that question very well at all. So I would be fine with that.
Mr. Granger? All right. So would it be okay with everyone if we started having communications with our representatives on the state level, then to socialize this with them and see if anyone would be willing to carry it in the next session? Yes? Okay. All right. And then moving beyond that specific item, I just want to open it up for all my members. If anyone has anything else generally that they want to discuss about the assessment right now, I would just open it up to everyone. About the reassessment. Ms. Bender?
Yes, I would say that I have been spoken to or emailed by probably over 20 residents, and not one of them had a positive thing to say. Not about Ms. Hart's office. They said they were great and were helpful, but it was about when they reached out to the assessor and they got information or received. One person even told me they didn't get a phone call back for 3 weeks. And so I'm just really disappointed in just the whole process. And from the 20 people plus that I've heard from, that's their experience also.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Mr. Stonehill?
Yeah, I'm very disappointed with it. I've heard a lot of complaints. Even personally, if I had complaints and my questions weren't even answered myself. So, Mrs. Hart, I know I don't want to call you on the spot, but I know you and I spoke the other day and you talked about the different amounts your office would assess XYZ piece of property, and what the amounts that he used were a lot higher than yours. Did you ever get an answer for that? No answer. Okay. That's all I have.
So real quick, before I get to you, Mr. Granger, Mr. Stonehill, I will tell you, I heard from a taxpayer who owns a number of commercial properties. Are you talking about a residential property or commercial property, or both? Because I know this taxpayer informed me that the assessor stated to her that in his opinion, commercial properties in King George were way undervalued, and there even were some folks that I guess, statements were made that we needed to be dragged into the 21st century is how it was put. So I just didn't know if were on one side of the house or the other.
We didn't really go into that. And when I was talking with Mrs. Hart, it was just a general figure. And yes, I heard that we had to get dragged into the Stone Ages.
You heard that too?
Well, yeah, I heard that. But we didn't speak about that. It was just a general figure across the board.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Granger. Okay, all right. Anything else with regard to that discussion item? All right, we'll go ahead and move on. County Administrator's Report. Mr. Miller.
All right. Well, first of all, like other folks, and I have to say that my tenure with Mr. Bush is probably shorter than others, but I do want to say thank you for your service to the county and your wisdom and the advice and the opinions and the information that you've shared with me since I've been able to be here. Very fortunate. Oh, okay. I'm going to have to figure this out. Okay. But thank you. And I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to be your county administrator for the 6 months that I was here. And I look forward to working with you as a citizen, as a friend. And I know that we will miss you. I know that the wisdom and the counsel and the commitment that you share or that you have towards this county and specifically your district, is very, very much represented every meeting that you're here. And I know that in my tenure of being a local government manager in my career, you really the opportunity to work with a lot of good folks and a lot of really committed folks. You're one of those top ones that I've worked with who has a very keen insight on things and understands and has the ability to express it. And I think that's very important. And again, anybody who's an elected official, I've said this before, my hat is off to anybody who has the ability to manage your personal life, your private life, your career, and then also be a servant to the public. It's a challenging task, and you've managed it well. So thank you. And, I would be remiss if I didn't say go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Next season.
Okay, so a couple items on there. One is and I've talked with the board of directors of the Service Authority. We do want to get together some kind of a joint meeting after the first of the year, talk about operations and talk about where we are with a number of things going on in the Service Authority. Y'all did get the email that I sent regarding the fact that the outgoing governor has put $16 million aside. Hopefully it'll stay in. I know you're never in favor of earmarks if it's somebody else that's getting it, but man, when you get them directed towards you, you're the biggest advocate. So $16 million for wastewater projects is a huge investment in this community if it can hold up in the budget. And we're very, very appreciative of Senator Stewart. I think Ms. Kupko obviously was very much able to convey to Senator Stewart our needs as well. And, we'll be able to do a number of things if this money ends up staying in. One of the things obviously is the decommissioning of Perkins Corner wastewater treatment plant. And also we would probably accelerate the decommissioning of the Oakland Park facility as well and start everything going to Hop Yard, which I think has been the original intent for many years. So we're very excited about that. As you know, we also are going to need to have a discussion with you all about surface water opportunities. And the Service Authority Board will be getting a draft report from one of our engineers about our opportunities in that area and where we need to be focusing. And so it's going to be a major project, obviously, if it pans out. And it would be a project that would involve the entire county operation. So we do need to have those kind of discussions. Also handed out the VDOT's primary evacuations route. This was forwarded to me by Delegate Ransom's office. And I think it's just a good particular reference. You can see 301 is obviously a critical piece of evacuation corridor, very important. And so if we ever have a major event that's evacuating people out of southern portion of the state and North Carolina, 301 is going to be heavily impacted, which means law enforcement is heavily impacted, which means your retail is very heavily impacted as well. So we will do everything we can to make sure that our folks are ready to go if some kind of event ever happens. Okay, so now we're going to see if we can do this. You got it. Okay, good. So these are your employees with December anniversaries. We have Marilyn Johnson in the Sheriff's Department. Just started, it looks like. 38 years. We have Tina Fenwick, 22 years. Heather Hall, who's not here, 16 years with community development. David Burge, who was here, is 15 years. We have Carol Arnott is with the library, 13 years. Chris Dines, when did you start?
10 years ago.
Well, what specific date, sir? No, it has to be December because you wouldn't be up there if it was, right? You understand that? Okay, 10 years with us. Thank you, Chris. Linda Herring, Commissioner of Revenue's office, Ms. Hart's, one of Ms. Hart's employees. Sarita, I'm sorry, my Parlet, that's the French Cajun pronunciation. Parlet, Social Services, 6 years. LaQuisha Fields in the Sheriff's Department 1 year, and Aaron Marr with the Sheriff's Department 1 year, and then Heidi Kissamore is in the community development, new hire this year, just came on board. So we like to provide you with that so that you can see what's all your employees that you're hiring. And I think that Ms. Sommelier gave us a 78 new hires over the course of the last year. Now, some of those people are exiting at the same time, so it's not like we have swelled to 78 new employees, but there's a lot of activity with our employees. And we appreciate all the support. And I thought the holiday luncheon was a very nice event, and we really appreciate the support that the Board of Supervisors provides us. And I know that the members of the staff that were there appreciate everything that you guys do for us. So thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Miller with regard to his report? Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, I just want to say thank you for the comments. I've had the pleasure of working with two very fine county administrators, Dr. Neiman Young, who is now in Corpus Christi, Texas, and Mr. Miller. I believe this board is in good hands. So again, thank you for the comments, and keep on keeping on.
All right. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, Mr. Bush?
I would like to make that.
You would like to move. Go ahead, sir.
So before I make this motion, to my colleagues, it's been wonderful. It's been a true pleasure. We haven't always agreed, but I believe there's always been that mutual respect. We were able to talk things out, and we're able to move on. And I think that's huge, and I wish that would take place in more legislative bodies across the country. It's truly been a pleasure. To all this swag that I'm bringing home, thank you. Ms. Kupka asked me what I would like as a departure. I said, I really want a county flag and a Commonwealth flag. I had no idea that I was going to get that. I mean, this is just, I'm extremely grateful. Thank you very much. It's been a true pleasure. With that, Madam Chair, I move to adjourn this board to the new board convening on January 4th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. in the boardroom.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned.